London was the last stop on the President's journey. Here, Mr. Kennedy recalled that from England, where the Mother of Parliaments stands as a vital symbol of representative government, had come many of America's most cherished traditions. A detachment of the Royal Navy rendered the honors as the President's plane arrived at London Airport. President Kennedy had come to consult with Britain's Prime Minister Mcmillan on the result of his talks with Chairman Khrushchev, while U.S. Secretary of State Rusk went to confer with President de Gaulle and other Allied leaders. On his arrival in London, the President of the United States was greeted by the Lord Chamberlain, the Earl of Scarborough, representing Queen Elizabeth. After shaking hands with Prime Minister Mcmillan, Mr. Kennedy expressed his pleasure at being in London.
I'm especially glad that, Prime Minister, to have an opportunity to counsel with you. And I must say that I consider it to be a fitting climax to a journey which has taken us from Washington to Paris, to Vienna, and to London.
Kennedy's visit to London was also of a private nature. President Kennedy was to serve the next day as the godfather at the christening of his niece. At Admiralty House, temporary residence of Britain's Prime Minister, while 10 Downing Street is being renovated, Mr. Kennedy and Mr. Mcmillan met for 4 hours. Their communique indicated their joint view that Soviet willingness to negotiate on Laos should be a test of Moscow's global intentions. It also noted agreement on the necessity of maintaining the rights and obligations of the Allied governments in Berlin. The British Prime Minister and Lady Dorothy Macmillan were hosts at a luncheon for President and Mrs. Kennedy. The warm hospitality of the British leader and Lady Macmillan spoke eloquently of the close ties of friendship and understanding that have so long united Britain and the United States. The continuity of British history is seen in London as the Guard changes at Buckingham Palace, part of the ritual and colorful pageantry that surrounds a royal family secure in the affections of the British people, an ever-fascinating sight for all visitors to London. In the afternoon of Monday, June 5th, the crowds gathered to watch the arrival of President and Mrs. Kennedy, the first time a U.S. president was to call at Buckingham Palace since President Woodrow Wilson came here in December 1918. The crowd surged forward for a look at President and Mrs. Kennedy as they arrived for a private dinner at the palace with Queen Elizabeth and Prince Philip. Later that evening, still in the formal clothes he wore for the dinner at Buckingham Palace, Prime Minister Macmillan accompanied President Kennedy to the airport. U.S. Ambassador to London, David Bruce, was the last to shake hands with the President, who was now on his way back to Washington. For Mr. Kennedy, it had been a long journey. It had been part of the task he had set for himself on becoming President of the United States, to begin anew the search for peace. The presidential plane left London at midnight. The next day, from the White House, President Kennedy summed up the significance of his Vienna talks with Chairman Khrushchev.
The somber mood that they conveyed was not cause for elation or relaxation, nor was it cause for undue pessimism or fear. It simply demonstrated how much work we in the free world have to do and how long and hard a struggle must be our fate as Americans in this generation as the chief defenders of the cause of liberty.